Section 14 of 3 Years in Europe, or Places I have Seen and People I have Met. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by James K. White. 3 Years in Europe, or Places I have Seen and People I have Met, by William Wells Brown. Letter 14. Stirling, Dundee, Dr. Dick, George Gilfillan, Dr. Dick at Home. Perth, Scotland, January 31, 1851. I am glad once more to breathe an atmosphere uncontaminated by the fumes and smoke of a city with its population of 300,000 inhabitants. In company with our friends William and Ellen Craft, I left Glasgow on the afternoon of the 23rd instant, for Dundee, a beautiful town situated on the banks of the river Tay. One like myself, who has spent the best part of an eventful life in cities, and who prefers, as I do, a country to a town life, feels a greater degree of freedom when surrounded by forest trees or country dwellings, and looking upon a clear sky, than walking through the prolonged thoroughfares of a city, with its dense population, meeting every moment a new or strange face, which one has never seen before, and never expects to see again. Although I had met with one of the warmest public receptions with which I have been greeted since my arrival in the country, and had had an opportunity of shaking hands with many noble friends of the slave, whose names I had often seen in print, yet I felt glad to see the tall chimneys and smoke of Glasgow receding in the distance, as our iron horse was taking us with almost lightning speed from the commercial capital of Scotland. The distance from Glasgow to Dundee is some 70 or 80 miles, and we passed through the finest country which I have seen in this portion of the Queen's dominions. We passed through the old town of Stirling, which lies about 30 miles distant from Glasgow, and is a place much frequented by those who travel for pleasure. It is built on the brow of a hill, and the castle from which it most probably derived its name may be seen from a distance. Had it not been for a professional engagement the same evening at Dundee, I would most assuredly have halted to take a look at the old building. The castle is situated or built on an isolated rock, which seems as if nature had thrown it there for that purpose. It was once the retreat of the Scottish kings, and famous for its historical associations. Here the Lady of the Lake with the magic ring sought the monarch to intercede for her father. Here James II. murdered the Earl of Douglas. Here the beautiful but unfortunate Mary was made queen, and here John Knox, the Reformer, preached the coronation sermon of James VI. The castle hill rises from the valley of the Forth, and makes an imposing and picturesque appearance. The windings of the noble river, till lost in the distance, present pleasing contrasts scarcely to be surpassed. The speed of our train, after passing Stirling, brought before us in quick succession a number of fine valleys and farmhouses. Every spot seemed to have been arrayed by nature for the reception of the cottage of some happy family. During this ride we passed many sites where the lawns were made, the terraces defined and levelled, the groves tastefully clumped, the ancient trees, though small when compared to our great forest oaks, were beautifully sprinkled here and there, and in everything the labour of art seemed to have been anticipated by nature. Cincinnatus could not have selected a prettier situation for a farm than some which presented themselves during this delightful journey. At last we arrived at the place of our destination, where our friends were in waiting for us. As I have already forwarded to you a paper containing an account of the Dundee meeting, I shall leave you to judge from these reports the character of the demonstration. Yet I must mention a fact or two connected with our first evening's visit to this town. A few hours after our arrival in the place, we were called upon by a gentleman whose name is known wherever the English language is spoken, one whose name is on the tongue of every student and schoolboy in this country and America, and what lives upon their lips will live and be loved forever. We were seated over a cup of strong tea to revive our spirits for the evening, when our friend entered the room, accompanied by a gentleman, small in stature, and apparently 75 years of age, yet he appeared as active as one half that age. Feeling half drowsy from riding in the cold, and then the sudden change to a warm fire, I was rather inclined not to move on the entrance of the stranger. But the name of Thomas Dick, LL.D., roused me in a moment from my lethargy. I could scarcely believe that I was in the presence of the Christian philosopher. Dr. Dick is one of the men to whom the age is indebted. I never find myself in the presence of one to whom the world owes so much as Dr. Dick, without feeling a thrilling emotion, as if I were in the land of spirits. Dr. Dick had come to our lodgings to see and congratulate William and Ellen Craft upon their escape from the Republican Christians of the United States, and as he pressed the hand of the white slave, and bid her welcome to British soil, I saw the silent tear stealing down the cheek of this man of genius. How I wish that the many slaveholders and pro-slavery professed Christians of America, who have read and pondered the philosophy of this man, could have been present. Thomas Dick is an abolitionist, one who is willing that the world should know that he hates the peculiar institution. At the meeting that evening, Dr. Dick was among the most prominent, but this was not the only distinguished man who took part on that occasion. Another great mind was on the platform, and entered his solemn protest in a manner long to be remembered by those present. This was the Rev. George Gilfillan, well known as the author of the Portraits of Literary Men. Mr. Gilfillan is an energetic speaker, and would have been the lion of the evening, even if many others who are more distinguished as platform orators had been present. I think it was Napoleon who said that the enthusiasm of others abated his own. At any rate, the spirit with which each speaker entered upon his duty for the evening abated my own enthusiasm for the time being. The last day of our stay in Dundee, I paid a visit by invitation to Dr. Dick at his residence in the little village of Broughty Ferry. We found the great astronomer in his parlour waiting for us. From the parlour we went to the new study, and here I felt more at ease, for I went to see the philosopher in his study, and not in his drawing room. But even this room had too much the look of nicety to be an author's sanctum, and I inquired, and was soon informed by Mrs. Dick, that I should have a look at the old study. During a sojourn of 18 months in Great Britain, I have had the good fortune to meet with several distinguished literary characters, and have always managed, while at their places of abode, to see the table and favourite chair. William and Ellen Craft were seeing what they could see through a microscope, when Mrs. Dick returned to the room, and intimated that we could now see the old literary workshop. I followed, and was soon in a room about 15 feet square, with but one window, which occupied one side of the room. The walls of the other 3 sides were lined with books, and many of these looked the very personification of age. I took my seat in the old arm chair, and here, thought I, is the place and the seat in which this distinguished man sat, while weaving the radiant wreath of renown which now in his old age surrounds him, and whose labours will be more appreciated by future ages than the present. I took a farewell of the author of the Solar System, but not until I had taken a look through the great telescope in the observatory. This instrument, through which I tried to see the heavens, was not the one invented by Galileo, but an improvement upon the original. On leaving this learned man, he shook hands with us and bade us God speed in our mission, and I left the philosopher feeling I had not passed an hour more agreeably with a literary character since the hour which I spent with poet Montgomery a few months since. And by the by, there is a resemblance between the poet and the philosopher. In becoming acquainted with great men, I have become a convert to the opinion that a big nose is an almost necessary appendage to the form of a man with a giant intellect. If those whom I have seen be a criterion, such is certainly the case. But I have spun out this too long, and must close. End of Letter 14. Recording by James K. White, Chula Vista.